Good morning, everybody, or I guess I should say good afternoon at this point in time. My name is Sarah Harker, and I'm going to be your host today for our webinar. I'm the Business Development Manager at Freedom Healthworks, and I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to get in here. I know lunchtime is a crunch for those of us on Central and Eastern time here, so give you until about 12:03. And while you're waiting, let's test out that chat box and let me know where you're coming from and what you're most looking forward to about spring. I was trying to think of a question to ask everybody, and here in Indianapolis today, it is an absolute downpour and not feeling very springy, but you can see my picture up here in the left-hand corner with my son. One of my son's baseball season is what we're looking forward to for sure. So pop down there and let us know. Looks like a few of you are putting in some Q&As here. Let's see. We have about 2 more minutes here. All right, looks like we had some issues with the chat. Hopefully that's working now. Got a Brownsburg person in here, Dane Delozier, looking forward to race season. Okay. All right, I think we're all set with the chat there. Give about 1 more minute for our stragglers. Grab a cup of water, a cup of coffee. Could use an extra cup of coffee right now. From Memphis, Tennessee, it looks like, representing Frontier Direct Care in Harlingen, Texas. Cool. Looking forward to swimming. You're probably going to get to swim a lot sooner than we are. Awesome. Okay, guys, feel free to jump in the chat anytime as we're going. We'll be watching that and make sure that your questions get answered. As you'll see, this whole group is very collaborative. We like more than just talking to ourselves, so please feel free to send those questions in. I just want to cover a few kind of housekeeping things real quick before we get started. We talked about the chat. Make sure that you're jumping in there. If you do have any specific questions that you're wanting answered from the panelists, please put that in the Q&A. And if you can just put a note on there for which specific EMR that your question is geared toward, that will be great. And we will get them going as they come in. And then I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. We do have one who's running behind with a patient, and hopefully Dr. Smith will join us here in just a few, but if not, we will get you the notes on elation as well. So you can see their beautiful faces here. Everyone's smiling really big and super happy with their EMRs, I guess. We've got Dr. Williams coming to us from Alabama, and Dr. Heer coming from Indianapolis, well, Fishers, Indiana. Dr. Smith is in Carmel, Indiana, and Dr. Campbell is all the way out in Seattle. So we've got a pretty wide range here of different types of physicians, and I'm excited for you to hear from them about why they choose to use the EMR that they do every day. When I'm talking with people who are looking at going into DPC for the first time and starting their practice, that is always one of the top 5 questions that I get is, what EMR do you want your doctors to use? And at Freedom, ironically, we're all about freedom, and we believe that that's totally up to the physician or nurse practitioner to choose how they'd like to serve their patients. Who wants to kick us off? Dr. Williams, that looked like you were raising your hand.
Oh, okay.
Tell us a little bit about what EMR you're using and why you chose it.
So currently I'm using Aero DPC, and the reason I chose it was Full disclosure, that picture was taken when I was using Elation. And I didn't,
Smile.
yeah, the smile. I didn't really have any issues with really anything. I was using Elation, Spruce, and Hint. And this was before I knew Arrow was getting bought out by Hint. But I was just having not a difficult time, but like it was just a lot of time switching between the operating systems. Like somebody would text me, I'd have to send it to Elation, you know, I would have to go into my Elation chart, click on it, you know, to sign it. And then if they needed, you know, billing questions, I'd have to get out of that and go into Hint and look up their name. And the process was just taking, you know, a little bit longer than I thought I could make it happen. And then when you get, you know, a lot of those a day, the seconds turn into minutes, minutes turn into hours. I'm like, I think I could shave some time off just doing these things. And so I really wasn't like angry at any of them. I just thought I could do it faster by doing something else.
Sure.
And so I looked into switching everything over to Arrow DPC because one of their kind of shticks is just everything's in front of you. And so far, they're kind of new. So they're working on some different types of bugs that if somebody wanted to, you know, learn more about that, it would be okay. But what I traded was the communication slowness. In Arrow, that's much better. The billing is getting adopted like as we speak into Hint. So the membership management and inventory, I would assume, is going to get better as soon as they get fully integrated with Hint, because Hint was great. And then the notes taking and communications are pretty good. I like the heads up display where you can get everything done. But overall, I think it was an okay switch, and I think it's going to get better once they get the bump smoothed out with Hint. So that's kind of
Yeah.
my EHR story.
Yeah, I think I probably should have started this conversation saying that for those of you who are new to DPC and trying to make that decision, you're probably going to, I'm guessing, hear from everyone. No one's going to say, I'm obsessed with this EMR. There's everybody wants more from whichever the EMR they're in. Obviously, it's something that's really important that you're using every day. So that's part of why I wanted to host this webinar and make sure that we could get those questions answered while also being realistic with what you're walking into for each one. So I appreciate your candidness there, Dr. Williams, on that. So, who wants to go next? Dr. Campbell, you want to tell us a little bit about yours?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we use Atlas MD in our practice and have since 2015. It was it was what we launched our practice with and have just stuck with it. There's been points in time where we've looked at other tools and options, and you know, every time when it really came down to it, I was just so resistant to giving up a tool that pretty much did it all, for trying to piece together, say, like an Elation through in plus whatever type of tool to manage our inventory and dispensing. And so I was just never able to justify pulling the trigger. So what I do love about Atlas, and maybe it's also one of the weaknesses, is that when Josh and his partners kind of built it, they really kind of started from the most simplest form that they possibly could take and kind of built the features out from there, versus taking an EMR that was designed for insurance and insurance billing and sort of trying to pare it down. So I do appreciate the simplicity of Atlas. I think the primary thing that keeps us with them is the integration of the inventory. And when we prescribe something, it just automatically pulls stock from what we have and applies that automatically to their next month's automatic billing. So that all just kind of happens in the background. Onboarding happens through Atlas. So we have an embedded enrollment form on our website. And so kind of start to finish, like it's just kind of the single tool that could be used. We've since added online scheduling that's that's outside of Atlas. So I think that is a convenience for us that's not included with the EMR. And so we use Acuity for scheduling and essentially just kind of disabled the schedule feature in Atlas. What else have we added? Yeah, and I'd say there's, for someone who's super type A and loves like being adding levels of organization within the EMR, like I think Atlas could really be fine-tuned to their liking. There's the ability to create macros. So essentially, I'd say on the clinical side, that's where it maybe lacks some features that I would appreciate. So you have to dig a little bit more for patient information, past visits, past diagnoses, prescription. So you have to navigate a little bit more, and you have to dig, and you have to be a little more organized as far as keeping track of the routine screenings and preventative items that need to be done on a routine basis. And so I find it easy for myself to lose track, kind of where I am with the patient, and being able to keep folks kind of in the pipeline, so to speak, to keep them on track. Yeah, I'd say I appreciate it for its simplicity, and it kind of combines all the tools from the business side that we need, and so that's working for us still.
Yeah. Interesting. I should have started out with saying, so Dr. Ryan, there's two Dr. Ryans on this call today. Dr. Ryan Campbell, who's just speaking, he is a naturopathic physician, and so is the other Dr. Ryan. So I think we see between Atlas, Charm, maybe an Arrow, people who are in a more specific specialty type of field tend to move towards those. Whereas family practice, internal med seem to also run towards Elation, and I would say Arrow as well for that. I think it's interesting you pointed out the inventory. That's always when we're talking to someone about Atlas, that's the number one thing that people really like. So if you're not planning on holding inventory in your office or having any medications or supplements and things like that, it might not apply, but people definitely sing their praises about the inventory system.
Yeah, I think if it weren't for the inventory system, I think we'd probably be shopping a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's kick it off to the other Dr. Ryan, Heer. He's in Fishers, and recently, I don't know, how long have you been here now in Indiana, Ryan? 2 years?
Oh, yeah, it's been, I think, since 2020, end of 2020. So yeah, it's going on 2.5 years now.
Yeah, so he came over to us from the West Coast, is in the middle of pushing for more naturopathic physicians being the coming to Indiana and bringing that focus over. So we appreciate that. We had quite a few discussions about EMRs, and you were pretty passionate about Charm. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say there.
Yeah, well, I started out with Practice Better, just due to simplicity, and it was something that starting out as a single practice, just a solo practitioner. It just made sense for me, but it just ran out of the functionality that I needed in the practice, and so I wanted to switch to Charm, which is a little bit more. It provided the inventory, had messaging, and a little bit more things you could do with the patients, and creating tasks to create reminders for upcoming physicals and stuff. And so that didn't exist with Practice Better, and I did with Charm. The other nice thing with Charm is because I was again still growing my practice, I switched fairly early on. It allows you to kind of grow with it, and so starting out, I didn't really need too much. I was able to start at pretty low, and so keeping overhead low and stuff, it was nice for that aspect. And then as I've gotten more busy and stuff, that continues to grow with it. I did look into, they do have a membership model that you potentially could use in place of Hint, but I decided, due to its Hint's ease, to just stick with Hint. And so I guess that's one of the downsides is having, I've got places where people can message me through Charm and through Spruce, and then I've got billing through Hint and through Charm. And so it doesn't integrate super well between all three. And so that part is a little bit frustrating, especially when someone's, I'm looking for an address and it's on Charm, but it's not on Hint, or it's on Hint and not on Charm, and just trying to update payment information can take some time. But overall, what I need it to be, Charm is pretty good. It's a web-based platform, and so you can access it pretty well. It functions pretty well on an iPad and on your phone. And so if you need to really do things on the go, which is pretty common, I can at least, I don't have to hop on a computer or, go somewhere else. They don't have a clunky, they have an app and it's terrible, so I never use it. But the web-based portion of it that makes it, on the iPhone, makes it so that's fine. It's not too big of a deal. And also it's one that you can add stuff to. And so, especially if you're building a practice and you're wanting to, again, keep kind of the overhead low, and it's like, hey, I don't need necessarily this right now, but maybe in the future, then you can. And so like the inventory function, for whatever reason, it's like if you wanted to create your own store, you can be able to do that through there. And so it's like a nice little add-on stuff. So that's kind of the benefit, is you can continue to add stuff on. The other thing too, let's see, I was thinking of in regards to Charm is that then, like, if you have any questions and stuff, it's pretty easy to get answers with them. They're able to get back to you pretty quickly. As far as the payment portals and stuff, they integrate with a program called Bluefin, and so they can set you up with like an in-office payment device, and so you're not having to use like Square, or trying to figure out how to pay for stuff in the office and everything. So overall, it's not too bad. It definitely has its flaws. I wish it did have like an app portion. I wish that the messaging was, obviously if it was integrated with Spruce, but if it was a little bit better. I think they do have a chat portion, but I haven't looked into that as much. But overall, I think I'm pretty satisfied with it. So it's not something that I'm really looking to change too much. Oh, and the scheduling portion. So that's what was the other reason, is it integrates really well with your website. And so like I can do online scheduling on my website. They've got links and stuff that you can put on your social media platform. And so as far as patient scheduling, it makes that pretty easy to do. And then you can also create a lot of parameters with scheduling. So if you don't want to say like, hey, I don't want a person scheduling a new patient visit without me approving it first, or I can say like, hey, make me look busy when I'm first starting out and I didn't have any patients. It makes it seem that you're a little bit more exclusive and stuff. And so when I was starting out a couple of years ago, that made sense. Now it's just like, oh, forget it, just get in when you can. But yeah. But overall, I think it's a good place, and it allows me to grow, and it's one that I really do think I'll stick with for a long time.
So for your scheduling, does it integrate with Acuity, or is it scheduling is straight through Charm?
Scheduling straight through Charm. And so, for patients that's I guess the one downside with the scheduling aspect is people have to sign up with an account with Spruce, with Hint, and with Charm. But once they have an account with Charm, they can just go on their patient portal and just choose an appointment whenever they want. And so they don't need to contact the office or like message me and say like, hey, can you get me an appointment for this time? They can just go in, choose an appointment, and then that's it. So it makes it pretty easy for me, as like I'm trying to be hands off as much as possible. And it's like, once you schedule, then fine, great. Once you figure that out, then you're good to go.
You mentioned it being easy to use when you're on the go, and we have a question in our box here that's an interesting one. Dr. Smith, you may be able to speak to this a little bit more too. So Dr. Opara, hi, Dr. Opara, I'm glad you can make it. He is a family physician and travels to developing countries with limited resources for medical missions. He's wanting to know what type of EMR and computer system accessories do you recommend. He's wanting something to help keep track of medical problems, progress notes, medications, and demographics. So I would imagine one thing that would be important to you, Dr. Opara, is making sure you're able to use it without internet. And I don't actually know the answer to that. Does anyone else know the answer to that one?
Yeah, it's definitely not Charm. You need internet for that. So
not Arrow either.
Yeah, I don't think Atlas would work for that.
Yeah, Dr. Smith has, she came in a little late after she had a patient that she was with. So thank you for joining, by the way, welcome. She has a really unique practice here in Carmel, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis, that has a big focus on Catholic family medicine and family planning. And she has a big heart for medical mission. So that's why I was referring to her on that one.
Yeah, I honestly, the only maybe workaround that I could think of, I have an add-on app that I use called VoiceBox MD that allows me to dictate. And it's actually, I mean, it's hooked into my computer, so I can just like turn it on and off, kind of like Dragon. There's an app for the phone that you can dictate notes onto, and I don't think you have to be connected to the internet to do that and to save the note within the app. And then later you could, I've never used that particular feature, but I know there's a way to then sync that note, that dictated note, over to a patient's chart. Again, kind of similar to what I know like Dragon Mobile and things like that have done previously. That would be like the only, maybe, but I don't know how like HIPAA compliant that is either, to be completely honest. So that's a good one. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it's definitely a new question. I think, and as far as equipment goes, I'm sure we have many Mac versus iOS iOS users versus Microsoft. I have never seen a EMR have a problem with one more than the other. They all seem to work great, whether using Mac or Microsoft for that. Does anybody have any input on that one?
I use a Mac and I haven't had any problems so far. And Caitlin, my counterpart in the office, uses a PC. So I mean, we're on the same platforms.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dr. Smith, while we're on you, do you want to talk a little bit about Elation and why you ended up choosing them?
Yeah. So I was, as other people were talking, I was glad I didn't have to go first, because I was able to like take some notes about what I wanted to highlight. So I think one of the big things, well, when we, signed up and launched through Freedom, Elation was the #1 recommendation. And so that was the one that I initially spent a lot of time looking at. And just to give some background, I came from two local, very large institutions. So I've, used Cerner and Epic and Athena and some of these really, really big EMRs. So I was a little nervous about switching to a more inadequate EMR. But I will be honest, I've been really, really impressed with Elation so far. So probably we mentioned being web-based. So it is web-based. It's very easy to access. I will say the con to that is that I don't think that the mobile interface is quite as friendly. It's not as easy. It's not impossible. You can send prescriptions. I can send prescriptions from the browser on my phone. It's just not quite, there's not like a nice mobile interface for it. So those are both, pros and cons, I guess, there. And then I really like, the scheduling is just super simple, I think, on Elation. You can have lots of different appointment types. Those appointment types, you can have forms for the patients to fill out ahead of time electronically that will then, you can then import into your note. And so, if you want to, again, I'm in primary care, so that might be different for some, but if you want to screen for depression and you want to just have that done ahead of time, that will auto load into their chart. If you want to ask about developmental milestones for well child visits, you can have all that in there, and then you can like morph, move all that over into your note really easily, which is kind of nice. Family history, things like that, patients can put all those things in, and it's a lot less documentation time on your part. The other thing that I really like is we draw labs and have, nurse visits for vaccines and things like that. So we're able to separate those onto different schedules, which is a little bit cleaner. And there's no extra cost with that, which is nice. And then the newest feature that I love with Elation is the ability to sync with my Google Calendar. So I can actually see on my Google Calendar, it doesn't give details, but it will tell me, today at 1 o'clock, you have an annual physical exam, and it'll give me the patient's initials. And so myself and my husband can see, when do I have patient appointments through the day, and it's all on my Google Calendar, which is kind of nice. You can also really easily block your calendar if, you're going to be out of the office for some reason, or you just, I want to go take a nap. Pretty amazing. So those are some pros. You can add your own handouts. You can create your own macros or dot phrases. I use those a lot. I really like that. So I also use Hint and Spruce, Hint from the billing side and Spruce from the patient communication side. We also use Spruce to like fax and do some things as well. But I like that they integrate, Elation and Spruce integrate. So if I have a long discussion with a patient and we decide to change a medication, I can select that group of messages and import it as a note into Elation really, really easily and sign off on it, which is nice. And then it's also searchable. So, I think one of you mentioned that if you're looking for, their last colonoscopy result, you can type in colon and it's going to find it really easily. And then I know somebody mentioned, I am, it is a membership, is a direct care practice, but occasionally I will have somebody who might be like the mom of a patient or something like that, where I do like a one-off appointment, like maybe they're not a member, but I do a level 4 office appointment. I like the Elation. I still write most of my notes. It's been ingrained into me over 10 years of medical training and practice. I still write my notes very much in a, traditional way, thinking about billing and coding and all those kind of things. And I appreciate the Elation gives me that, is kind of structured in that way, because there have been those times where maybe I do want to actually, give a patient an invoice for a level 4 office visit that they can take back and submit to their insurance if they wanted to. So for those one-offs or procedures or things like that, it's kind of nice to be able to have that structure to help with documentation. My only other 2 cons, I would say, with Elation are it takes a lot of work on the front side or even ongoing to load, like common referrals, like specialists that you refer to, imaging centers, lab centers, things like that aren't like already built in. So a lot of times, like if I'm referring to a cardiologist locally, if they're not already in the Elation database, or if they're in there incorrectly with wrong information, that can be a little bit cumbersome to like, you either correct it or do you just like print the referral and fax it separately. So that's been a little bit cumbersome. And then I found out about, I don't know, probably like a month and a half in, that Elation has limits on free faxes, which what has been particularly problematic with a very fast growing practice where we're pulling lots of records in. And, and then it's like so many cents per page after, I can't remember what it is, but that was a little bit of a surprise. It has been, over the last 6 months, we've had an additional bill tacked on to Elation for fax overages. So that was eventually that will get better because we won't be getting massive records in, but at least initially that was a little bit like, well, that kind of stinks. But like I said, Spruce also faxes for free, which is nice. And so we utilize that a lot too.
Okay. One thing Dr. Campbell had mentioned was having like reminders for like annual visits or things like that. I know you and I were talking about this yesterday a little bit with Hint, and getting the reminders of needing to re-sign agreements and things like that. Do you feel like Elation has a better way for keeping track of annual visits and things like that coming up?
I have not found it if it exists. So there's at least not like an easy, it's a good question. Like, when I'm writing somebody's note, there is a follow-up section. That is, I will say that is one thing that I miss. Like Athena would allow me to, just below like, my follow-up, you can put in there, drop down months. And that sets a reminder in the system to cue the front desk in 3 months if the patient hasn't scheduled an appointment to reach out to them. I'm not aware of a feature in Elation that does that. Maybe there is, and I just haven't found it, but it's not easy to find.
Does everybody else just use Spruce for that, for the reminders? Do you just like schedule a reminder in there, or how do you guys keep up with that?
Most of my patients are really good about.
Yeah, they won't let you forget that.
They don't. Yeah. I'm like, most of my people don't forget.
Yeah.
But
There's tasks you can set in Arrow. Unfortunately, you can't time a task to like pop up in like 3 months or something. So I just hide all the tasks that aren't due for this day. So that's kind of a little bit of workaround, but there are ways to remind yourself or somebody else on your staff to do something on a said day. I just wish they would just pop up when needed and not stay on the task list. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, Charm actually does have tasks that do pop up on certain days, so that one is a pro of that one. But yeah, you can set like tasks for like, hey, remind me, and June 26th to go, follow up with this one person. So you can do that with Charm, which makes it a little nice. But of course, if you don't clear your task, then they just build up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd say Atlas sounds pretty similar to Arrow, where you can you can future date a task, but it populates and it just sits there. So if you're like, well, I need to do a skin screening and 365 days, it just gets added, and then you're staring at it every time you open that task list.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a way to hide the tasks that aren't due for a while. Yeah. So that's a so I tend not to think about even doing a task because I just hate looking at it.
I can feel that for sure. We have another question asking about if any of the EMRs that you all are in have new features coming up. I think probably Dr. Williams answered that in the chat here, but Arrow for sure is going to be the one with the most new features promised, because they are fairly newly merged with Hint. So does anybody else know of any other features that are coming for your platforms?
Not
No.
sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say Atlas is always rolling out new features, but they're pretty slow, and they will often shoot down suggestions pretty quickly made by the Atlas community. They're just like, yep, nope, that is not on our development.
Not on the agenda.
We're not doing that. Yeah. So yeah, they're still to this day trying to keep things kind of clean and simple.
Dr. Williams, is there anything specific that you're most looking forward to that'll be added to Arrow soon?
Trying not to badmouth it too much, but I'd say like the biggest problems I've had are in the billing system of Arrow in its current state. And with Hint, it was very easy to do the stuff that I'm having problems with in Arrow. So my thoughts are, when this thing gets turned into Hint OS, pretty much those things will be resolved. So for example, in Arrow is pretty strict with the, hey, you get your membership kind of classes, and everybody has to fit into this certain type of class or the certain type of membership. And I'm like, well, what if they only get billed once a year? What if they do my annual plan? Then I have to go in there, create a separate billing for them and kind of a separate product essentially, and just bill them once a year for that product, set it for a timer. And it's just, it doesn't have to be that complicated, but somehow it is. And when they switched me from Hint to Arrow, a couple of the paying systems got lost in translation, so I had to go back and beg the patient to re-enter their system. If they get sent a here's your new payment, enter your new payment stuff, for some reason the button they use is like enter your ACH, and then like little bitty gray letters under it has or credit card, and all my patients are like, I don't want to hook up my bank. And I'm like, no, just go hunt for the credit card button below it. And it's like, why? But hopefully that gets better in the near future. Otherwise, I will lose more hair about it. But that's kind of the bugaboo. Like it's been a lot of extra making custom memberships, making custom situations for my patients. And it's just it's a little bit of the weak spot, I would say. But they're integrating with Hint. That was not Hint's weak spot. So I would think that this is about to improve greatly.
Okay.
That was my PG
Good answer.
rated version.
Yeah, we try to keep things G-rated around here
Yeah.
every now and then, at least on camera. Okay, this might be a hard question, but this one's for me. You know, the icebreaker of, you know, you're going to a desert island and you can only take one thing. Well, for your EMR wish list, you only get one thing that gets added. What's it going to be?
Paper charts.
Stop.
I'd bring a big binder. We're just doing it old school.
Anybody else?
You're asking what feature would you want?
Yeah, if you can
Like
get one
magically
thing
made?
added.
If you
Yeah, magically added in there easily, what would you pick?
I mean, integration with Hint and Spruce. Yeah, if I could integrate it better, it'd be so much easier. That's for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, when you create a referral and fax it off in Atlas, you can't attach. You can send the referral and the patient information, et cetera, but you can't attach supporting documents. And so you have to like queue it all up so you can hope that the faxes come like kind of one right after the other, so that you have the referral plus the supportive documents, and that they're not coming like 20 minutes later and getting sort of mishmash when they show up somewhere. So if they could just put a little paper clip on the fax where I could just attach the document,
Yeah.
that would be nice. But even still within Atlas, you have to kind of, you don't want to send the whole chart. And so you kind of have to select kind of which notes you want to send and which labs, and you have to kind of create this. I usually end up creating another PDF and putting all those documents together, and then reloading that back into Atlas, and then sending that as a separate fax. So that's on my wish list.
That sounds really fun, Dr. Campbell.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What about you, Dr. Smith? Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I feel like we've been fortunate to have workarounds for most of those issues, but for me, I tend to be, I have patients do a lot of like forms and different things, just history forms and for various, whether it's family planning or different things. And so I think the ability to customize the patient forms and documents and things a little bit better, where you can make like, patient drop downs for questions and things like that, would be super helpful, because right now it's a little clunky and there's not always somewhere for it to export to in the chart. That makes a lot of sense. So that would probably be my, I think, most helpful at this point.
Okay, good answers. I thought someone was going to say something about like coffee being involved somehow. So those were all very serious answers from you guys. My last question that I have for you is really the meat of this webinar. Someone getting into DPC for the first time, what do they need to know that's going to be different for their charting needs compared to traditional medicine? If they're coming straight out of a network, how do you chart differently than you did before?
I chart for myself more so than I did before. Before, like Dr. Smith says, most of the EHRs are built for the claim to be sent. Now I chart for my own brain to read that in a X amount of months to go, what was I thinking back then? And you can customize templates to make sure that happens. But the biggest change is that I am writing for myself, or if the patient ever reads it, to explain what the thought process was and what the plan going forward is. So it's a lot more like SOAP notey than it is sending claims to insurance companies. 99214 has never been written on any of my charts. It's just what's needed and what we're doing.
Okay.
Anybody? I would totally agree with that. That's been such a burden off of my shoulders. I know you guys would agree too, that and sometimes hard to remember. Like, it's hard to get out of that habit of like, oh, I have to put a review of systems in. Like, oh no, I don't, because I already covered what's written in the HPI, or the subjective section. or even the physical exam, just being able to kind of, again, document what's pertinent, because the patient, that every time they come in, they're still missing their pinky. I don't need to like document that every time,
Yeah.
So that's been really refreshing.
Okay. Doctors Ryan's.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And I think when I've kind of swung a little bit back towards, after realizing I was going to have the notes to referral partners, I I kind of started to think about the information I was adding in a way that they were probably a little more used to seeing too. That, somewhat based on my own insecurities and in what that judgment might be when they review my notes and have it look a little bit more like I was clicking the correct buttons. But yeah, I'd say, primarily charting for myself and just making sure that, kind of upon review, I know where I was at and what the next steps would be, and less about, how many systems did I hit with my physical exam that was probably not even needed for that visit.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. And it's gonna be the same thing. Yeah. It's to Dr. Williams' point, it's so I can see the progression. I'm able to really, so the patient, and even if they see the chart note, can see kind of my thought process, and so I can just really pick up where I left off. And so when I'm pulling up the note, and because it has this feature where you can kind of pull it over to the side and see like, all right, well, what did we discuss last time, and that way it just makes it really seamless. I don't have to spend time searching through notes to see what exactly did I talk about last time, what things were pertinent, really. Just makes it so much easier. So yeah, I think that's been probably the biggest takeaway from the DPC model.
I was at the very first ever, here's a plug for the pediatric DPC mastermind this past weekend in Orlando. And I loved listening in to everyone's charting comments, but of course, in very Patch Adams-like fashion, they were all commenting about the notes they made, like they have a pet crab named Joe or something like in the notes too. And I think that's one thing that I've seen different in DPC is that, everything's so focused on your relationship with your patients that you have the time to write in those extra things and know that they have a pet crab named Joe and those types of things. So I think that's always important too. I think that we can close things out. My only other question is really, do you guys have any advice for people who are just getting into it and when they're trying to pick their EMR, how to do it besides listening to this webinar, of course?
I think most offer demos.
Exactly. Yeah. Most offer demos.
I would sit down and play around.
Or if you're local to one of us, I can't speak for the others, but I know I'm always happy to have other docs or prospective DPC docs in the office shadowing. Come look over my shoulder, see how we do things. I'm totally open to that too.
I think that's great advice. Both go ahead and demo a few, nail it down to what you're wanting between 1 and 2 of them, and then see who you can collaborate with.
To answer Stephen's question, Arrow bills via like 0 to 50 patients. They don't bill you anything, and then from 50 to 350, they'll bill you X amount of money. So it's based off of how many patients you have signed up. I don't know if my scale was accurate, so forgive me, but that's how they bill things. Other systems are a little bit different.
Yeah, and for Charm, it's the first 15. If you're doing the free plan, it's limited to 50 encounters per month. And then there's like flex pricing with like 50 cents per encounter for a monthly minimum of 25. But then if you go like full blown, the max is 350 per iter per month. So it's kind of how the pricing works for Charm.
Yeah, I think Elation, I should probably know this better than I do, but I want to say that they are more focused on per provider or per user under your account. And so I think right now I get a little bit of a discount being affiliated with Freedom and their GPO, but I want to say I pay like $175 a month. And that's for one provider and 1 office staff.
Yeah, Atlas is 300 per provider. and it's just a flat fee. So I'm not sure if they've changed that at all, but that's how it was when we started, and it hasn't changed over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yep. Did we
We
lose
lost
our
our,
host?
We lost Sarah. Yeah. We lost our moderator.
Yeah. Well, this is about to spin out of control. All right, they let us loose. All
I don't
right.
know if there's any other questions, or
Yeah.
you guys had any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I know that like starting out, because I feel like I'm still kind of fresh into it, just trialing different ones was really helpful. I mean, there's so many, it's like when we're talking joining with other providers, it's like everyone wants something a little bit differently. And so nothing's going to be perfect. You kind of just make do with what you get.
Yeah.
And so there just comes a point where you're just going to have to dive in and just commit to it, because it's such a pain to switch things, when you're 100, 150, 200 people in, even when it's like 25 people, like shoot, it's just has such a pain to transfer everything over. So yeah, I think just knowing like you're not going to be perfect, just find something that, a couple things that you like about it, and as long as it's not complete trash, and then just get the just go with
You
it.
can always find workarounds.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
Thanks for keeping things going, guys. I mentioned that there were storms here and my power went out. I was like, of all timing.
We all panicked. It was fine.
I know that's another nice thing about being in DBC is everybody's pretty used to just going with the flow.
Yeah.
So
I was ready to go get drinks with everybody. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I wish.
Dr. Smith is expecting, so I think she and I are drinking the same.
Yes. Boring drink.
Yeah,
Yeah.
boring. But I was just getting ready to say that the one thing you're going to really find in DPC is that it's such a collaborative community, and don't be afraid to reach out. I'm 99% sure they're not going to say, no way, you can't come shadow me. It's a little different than traditional medicine where you see that competition. Everybody here doesn't care how you do it. They just want to help move the market to safer for docs and for patients altogether. So you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to help connect you. I'm nosy enough to know people in about every state at this point in DPC and would be happy to connect you with someone near you as well. So thank you, all of you guys, for coming today and for giving us all of your knowledge about EMRs. And I know sometimes it can be a boring topic, but you made it very entertaining and it is an important one. So really appreciate it. And thank you for all of our attendees for hopping in here. And you can tune back in. We're going to be having webinars pretty regularly now on different topics. Feel free to shoot an email over. If you have a particular topic burning in your soul, we're happy to address it. So we will see you all soon.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.